In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight, our special guest is Reggie Stewart. Reggie was born and raised in Alpharetta, Georgia, is a proud Kennesaw State University graduate with a lifelong passion in performance, growth, and human potential. A competitor at heart, he grew up playing football, baseball, basketball, and soccer, which gave him a foundation of discipline, adaptability, and teamwork. Today, he channels that same drive into his newest sport of choice, pickleball, where he continues to push himself, compete, and stay connected to his athletic roots. Reginald is a brand partner with LifeWave, where he helps people discover natural wellness and financial opportunities through stem cell reactivation technology. Passionate about growth and health, he uses his platform to empower others physically, mentally, and financially. Reggie is also the founder of Reggie Creations, a brand that blends business strategy and creativity by designing apparel and accessories to help entrepreneurs and organizations stand out. His professional experience also includes high-performing customer service roles with Uber and Lyft, where he built strong networks and consistently delivered five-star service. He and his father also co-manage two Airbnb properties, building long-term investments while creating memorable stays for guests. Outside of business, Reggie serves as a middle school flag football coach at Annunciation Day School, where he creates offensive and defensive plays while mentoring young athletes on and off the field. Family and community are central to who Reggie is. His extended family roots in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, go back to when his parents met at Southern University athletics, run in the family. As his sister Lauren Stewart played softball at the University of South Carolina, and his cousin Jeremy Stewart played football at Stanford University with Andrew Luck, as well as the Oakland Raiders and the Denver Broncos. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Reggie Stewart, please.
Hello, how you doing?
Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good. I appreciate the introduction. Everything on there was perfectly said, so I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Is there anything you'd like to add before we jump into the show?
Well, actually, ironically, I just started today. I have a friend who she does like after school athletics, and today's a Jewish holiday, so their New Year's is today, and they had these games and stuff. So she asked me if I could help out with that. So that was another thing that I, can add to the list of things that I've been doing for the community. They were kids ages from first grade to fifth grade, so it was fun getting out there with them and getting to, run around, compete with them. We played some football, some flag football, some basketball, capture the flag, all kind of stuff. So I'll be doing that again tomorrow, as well as October 2nd. So that was just another cool experience, as well as, of course, you mentioned the pickleball, but I also got into playing kickball about 2 years ago. So I have a kickball team, two kickball teams that I play with, and just being able to channel that athletic, competitive, fire into both pickleball and kickball has been pretty cool.
All right, cool. Well, I like to jump in as I jump into the show. I want to start with the conversation that you and I just had. We were talking about, in the neighborhoods that you grew up with compared to, two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
And what I want to start with is, if you don't mind, I would like for you to take us back to where you grew up and what did your neighborhood look and feel like?
Okay, so I grew up in Alpharetta, Georgia. Back then, we used to. I grew up playing baseball. So when I was in the baseball world, definitely in Alpharetta, it was predominantly white, white American, and I grew up in the neighborhood. It's called the Pines. So it's literally the Pines, and then right next to it is OC Park, which is the bigger parks in Alpharetta, where a lot of the talented baseball players grew up going to. So I ended up there was at the time it was a sports authority. It was like a sports equipment store. They're not really in business anymore, but the sports authority I went to was off North Point Parkway in Alpharetta, Georgia, and I ran into this guy while I was looking at baseball bats because the upcoming baseball season was coming up. And he asked, where do you play? How old am I? At the time I was like 10 years old and I had good size. And so he kind of was me from that aspect. And because I was there with my dad. So my dad was there, he filled him in on everything that I was doing, where I was playing. And turned out he had a team that he just started in Forsyth, so Forsyth County, Georgia, and this was like 2000, 2001. So this was 10 years after Oprah Winfrey had just did her walk through Forsyth County, and they were throwing stuff at the people that were walking with her and calling them all kind of names and all kind of racism. So at first we were kind of looking at it like, do we want to take this chance and go about it like that? But we ended up doing it. I ended up going out there playing the next 2 years out there. Ran into some obstacles, but it wasn't anything that was too crazy. So, but the experience that I had, that was my first time playing on a travel team. But growing up in Alpharetta, it kind of like it opened my eyes to what it was to grow up around white people with money. And I wasn't, I never really um, I never was boxed in to where I couldn't move around like I wanted to. I had friends of all ethnicities, all backgrounds, all, classes. So, and then like you said, my family, my roots, they're from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So, um, growing up in Alpharetta, it just, it had me set on, okay, well, I know what I can do in life, and I know that there's going to be adversity or going to be obstacles, and it kind of molded me into the person that I am today because I can see things really before they happen in a lot of situations where I'm not really blindsided by certain things that are going on. Definitely nowadays. So,
So, how did living in a predominantly white neighborhood shape your identity as a young black boy?
so um, being a young black boy in Alpharetta, I was able to see, how certain groups, like I would get painted as, okay, well, I'm supposed to be, since I'm black, I'm supposed to be quote unquote hood. And so I'd have white friends that would try to talk a certain way. And I would tell them bro, you don't have to talk to me, this way just because I'm black. So I'd have these conversations over and over and over. And then once I hit third grade, my mom actually took me to the school she was teaching at because she taught in Dunwoody at Montgomery Elementary School. So I was able to go to school with her while growing up in Alpharetta. And Montgomery at the time was pretty diverse. So it was white, black, Hispanic, Asian. So I wasn't really just limited to the white community, but I was able to really, delve into it because of, again, my baseball background. I was in those groups, definitely throughout the summer. When I'm playing in the summer, I'm playing in the spring, and even in the fall, I was playing football in Roswell. So I grew up playing youth football in Roswell, even though I was living in Alpharetta. And so I was able to kind of see, everything that was going on around me. And I think, one thing that kind of gets misconstrued is, we look at Black people that grow up in predominantly white areas and kind of automatically assume, oh, they had it easy, or, it was okay, y'all had money and that's all that mattered. But it's funny, I actually just had a conversation with a lady after we spoke the last time. And because it was a lady I picked up with driving Lyft, and she grew up in Woodstock, and that was a predominantly white area when she grew up, still is. But she was telling me some of the same things that I was familiar with, as far as people are surprised when we speak a certain way, like, oh, you mean you can actually speak with some type of our intellectual ability, or you're articulate, and it's like a surprise. And hearing that as a kid just over and over and over, like, that could be just as detrimental to the growth of a kid as, oh, yeah, you don't have much money, or you don't come, like, all that, it's all comes down to programming. Like, you don't want to just say, okay, well, your childhood was great or it wasn't great based off of just finances. Like, there are more than to life than where you can really have a significant impact on a kid that's like 8-9 years old, and it goes all the way through just the overall intellectual level and the growth of because it goes further than just school. Like, we like to say, okay, you got parenting in school, but there are other factors that come into play when it comes to raising it. That's why they say it takes a village to raise a child. It's true, because it really depends on the village that you have around you. So just as important as it is to have a positive village around you, is just as important to not have that negative village around you as well, because that negative side of the village can just erase all the work that positive side is trying to do. So I think that was one thing that was key with me, is that I did grow up around a lot of positive, reinforcements in my life. And because that's one thing about sports, is you can't really just you can't really just rely on talent. Like, a lot of the people, like, it wasn't until I got older when I understood the importance of, like, team chemistry, and the importance of having a great locker room. Like, at first I used to, like, when I was 11, 12 years old, I used to think, well, if you have a lot of good players on your team, the team should succeed. And it wasn't until I got older when I started understanding, okay, well, now I understand why it's important to be a great teammate, not only on the field, but off the field as well, because the mental strain that a player can go through can really affect on the field performance. And so, yeah, just growing up in Alpharetta, it helped me see, certain sides, as far as, okay, well, once I get on the field, I know, thanks to my positive reinforcements, I know that my teammates, the parents, I knew that they had my best interest at heart, because they showed it, like, on a day-to-day basis. Like, it was really like, if my mom and my dad weren't available, I'd had a teammate's mom to be able to pick me up, drop me off. Because my mom was coming from Dunwoody. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was constantly traveling. So I had a pretty strong, village around me, where somebody could understood with, whatever situation I was in, they could help out. So it was pretty cool though.
So so let's I wanna throw this question out to you, because let's say where you're living at, and you're having more of the positive influences and images that you see that help to shape your life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say you've got these kids that you may be friends with that live in urban areas, where they have both positive and negative reinforcements that are in their lives, but they may not be as strong as a supporting cast that you had. When being friends with those individuals, those kids. How does that shape, or how does that play into your everyday living or your everyday life, as to how do you guys mesh?
Great question. So that was actually part of um, that conversation I told you I had with one of my friends about the whole code switching and all that. I told him that it was like one of those things where you don't want to look at being articulate as just, oh, you're code switching and it's something to get into, to move up in the corporate ladder. But what I told him, was part of my explanation was, okay, it's important for me to be able to articulate clearly because I'm trying to reach the max audience, the max amount of people. I don't want to cut off anybody. And part of my reasoning behind that was because I told him I'm a natural born leader based off of, just who I am. But a lot of the experiences that I had growing up is what shaped my leadership ability. And part of that is because I was able to, to be in circles of people that, come from all walks of life. So of course I had some friends at the time. It was when I was going to Montgomery Elementary and Chamblee Middle, they had this program. They still might have it. It was called Minority to Majority. So it was an M to M transit system. So they had a bus that would take kids from College Park or Lithonia and bring them to, Dunwoody or Chamblee and Alpharetta. So I had friends from all over Atlanta that were coming to these schools. And one thing that I would constantly, run into is like, how do I connect with them on a level to have them understand, the importance of staying positive and, making sure you don't let these negative situations or scenarios in your life really, take over. And because I had a friend that he was coming from College Park, and this is where sports, I think sports was such a big part of my life. It's like, I didn't really expand outside of sports. Like everything that I did, like growing up, it was somehow connected to sports. And one of my friends, he came from College Park to Alpharetta, and he played football with me. And I would constantly be in his ear because I knew what kind of like, when he went back home, what kind of stuff was going on over there. Like, so one thing I would always lean on is, hey, just look at what playing football could possibly do for you as far as college, professional possibly. So, and that was one thing that I could kind of like get him to see, because it's one thing to try to, just lean on, just staying out of trouble. But one thing I had going for me was the fact that good in football and he was good in football and we could connect on that. So I knew that was kind of like an angle for me to really, hey, stress to him, like, you can do this if you stay out of trouble, you stay on the right path, you get your schoolwork done, you do X, Y, Z. Like, so he was pretty good with that. He had a good attitude too. That was another thing I liked about him, is that he never really like was looking for trouble. So I knew that he wanted to do the right thing. So I think just being able to come from the leadership aspect or the stance, it helped me really be able to connect with guys that were maybe not from that area, or, even Dunwoody, because Dunwoody was a, pretty nice area, and they had kids coming from areas all over the east side, west side of Atlanta. So even the south side. And it's just like, I was able to lean on athletics because this was before social media. So sports was really our social media. We had boys and girls that were just athletic, and they didn't, of course you had people that weren't into sports, but like sports really dominated like my childhood. So that's one thing that really, I think, helped me like mesh with, kids from the other side.
So let me ask you this. Have you guys ever had the discussion that you both faced a stigma that was basically like pitting you guys to be different? Because with you coming from the area in which you're coming from and not maybe seeing as many black people, that it shaped you to be one way, to where they're like, here around majority black folks, where there's this negative stereotype regardless of the case. And basically it's saying that they're always troublemakers, they're getting in trouble, but they don't know how to live.
Yeah.
So have you guys ever had that discussion? Because I think the stigma on both ends, just when you just think about it, it's kind of like a hindrance. And when I say it's a hindrance, it's like, you're your natural self, they're their natural self. So it's not saying that you guys are any different. Your environment may be different, but you're not different. And so have you guys ever had that kind of discussion?
So yeah, that was part of the discussion. So that I had that I told you about. So this guy, long story short, this guy heard, he was walking by our conversation. We were talking about kickball, and he asked us where we were from, and I told him I was from Alpharetta. My sister was right next to me, so she, said we were both from Alpharetta. And then a friend that we were talking to, he's from the Lithonia Stone Mountain area. So, but when he found out, when he heard we were from Alpharetta, he was like, "Oh, the affluent." And then he started going into his whole like spiel on, how beautiful Alpharetta is, how the only way people can live in Alpharetta is if they have money, or how articulate my sister and I were. And then he made a comment like along the lines of, you got to come to Decatur, to get culture. And so that was a long conversation that we had with him, but he slipped that in there, and that was part of it. And I was like, I talked to my friend with my sister outside about the whole conversation, and he was kind of like, it kind of like rubs him the wrong way when people just automatically assume that a person is, intellectual or not intellectual based off of how articulate they are. So we talked about how the guy was just like going on and on and on about how great Alpharetta was. And I asked him, I was like, did you, because I had another friend there, he was listening as well. He's from Stone Mountain. So I asked both of them, I was like, did y'all hear anything that he said that might have been like a slight diss towards, us and growing up in Alpharetta? And they were both, yeah. And they both were like, oh no, he talked great about you guys the entire time. And talked about your area in a positive way the entire time. If anything, it was just uplifting. And I was like, so I looked at my sister and she started smiling before I could even get it out. Like, this is what we go through, like on a constant basis. Like you don't even hear it, because you're not listening with the ear of, oh, he's talking down on me basically because he's saying, we're not cultured because we grew up in Alpharetta. So I brought it up and I said it. And once I said it, one of my friends, he got it immediately, which is the one that made the comments about not liking, how people, get looked down upon based on how they talk. And the other friend was kind of like still trying to figure it out. And then he kind of explained it like, yeah, he's saying that basically we aren't cultured because we grew up in Alpharetta. And it's like, oh, if we see another black person in Alpharetta, it's like, amazing, like it's just breaking news or whatever. But at the same time, we're not going to get that experience of what it's like to quote unquote be black. So yeah, it's just we haven't really. That was outside of that conversation. We never really got into like a deep conversation as far as the differences between how people look at people that grew or black people that grew up in suburban white area versus growing up in an urban community that's predominantly black. So yeah, it's definitely coming though from we're starting to really navigate those lanes now because we're starting to see a little bit more of what's going on.
Well, I'm sure that you guys are able to see that, just like I can tell that you are. But these are the kind of things that actually pit our communities against each other with that kind of talk, because there are like an enormous amount of people, believe it or not, there's an enormous amount of people that actually would say something just like that. I'm talking people that look like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe from an area like that, because I've experienced that, but it's not that it offended me. I just told them that they need to check themselves because, you don't know me, you don't know where I'm from. I'm not from Georgia, but at the same time, I know everything about this state and the metro area. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people that do that causes rifts in our communities, and it causes people to not actually connect, causes people not to grow, and it causes people to not be able to come together to do the things that they need to do because they say we have to be separatists, you know. And so that's why I was asking that, because that I thought that was really interesting when we discussed that, because I'm like, oh my God, you know, I mean, here you are, a young future leader of the world, and you know, with people saying that, you know, that's just kind of ugly, because people are facing that all over the place now. It's
Yeah,
really ugly.
that's very true.
Let's venture over into your entrepreneur journey.
hmm
Can you tell us what inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
So again, it's funny. The first thing that really caught my eye with entrepreneurship, I went to Baton Rouge, and I want to say I was a junior in high school. I went during Mardi Gras, and I was catching bees left and right, and I ended up getting like, I want to say 3, 4 garbage bags, like big garbage bags full of beads. And
You mean
I,
like actual bumblebees?
no, like,
Or
bees that that they have when they
oh,
throw,
beads.
yeah, bees.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah. So I took them back to high school at the time. I was going Alpharetta High. I was a junior. And at first I was like, I had some on, and I didn't like take all the bags the first day back, but I was wearing them, and people were like, oh, they love them, they love the colors. Some of them had like special things on them, of course, and they would ask me like, can I give them some? And I only had like 3 or 4 on me at the time, but I was like, dang, getting a lot of attention. Maybe I can go back, get the beads that I had at the house, and I can bring them to school and just sell them. And so I ended up, the ones that had the special things on them, I sold them for more. Like I'll sell the basic standard ones for $1. The next big ones, I would sell them for $2. Then the special things, I was selling those for $3 and $5. And when I saw like my ability to get a product that was in high demand and sell it for, at the time, it wasn't even that much money, but the way that it was adding up, I was like, this kind of makes sense. And, and then still playing football and baseball, but I think I played my freshman year at Mississippi College. I messed up my quad 3 different times, and it was kind of like a setback. I wasn't used to not playing through a whole season because of an injury. And I didn't really like it too much out there. So I ended up transferring back, and so football and baseball basically it ended. But one of the main reasons I was like really into baseball growing up was, I was good at it. I love the sport, and I was like, well, these guys, the amount of money that they're making, and the fact that they're not really taking like a tremendous toll on their bodies while making money, it was really appealing to me, growing up through middle and high school. So once I saw that was going to happen, I saw entrepreneurship as an option to like really replace that potential financial freedom. And so I looked at entrepreneurship like, well, this makes sense because one, I already am kind of like my own leader. So I don't really like, I never like, I like the idea of a 9 to 5 based off of, just being able to be around people and my um, ability to lead teams and, network with people and all that. But what really appealed to me about entrepreneurship was time and financial freedom with that offer. And because one thing that I like more than money is time and health. Like those are time and health are really my 2 main things, and then money's close third. But being able, like, I was working at Pizza Hut my sophomore year of college, and I was it was a Friday night, and this is like prime pizza delivery time. But my sister, she was playing on this travel softball, and she had they had a national tournament that was actually going to be played. The championship game was going to be played on I believe it was Fox Sports, and I was like, oh, this is my sister's first like big time softball game, and I already knew she was going to be, she was going to make it pretty big in softball, but this was like in her high school days, so I'm like, oh, I got to go watch this, and this is down the street, so I'm working at a Pizza Hut that's literally 10 minutes up the street from Fowler Park, which is in Forsyth County, and that's where they were hosting the tournament. And my manager at the time was like, "No, we can't afford you to, take off. We need you today. You're our best driver, and it's really busy, yada yada yada." Eventually, I was like, "Wait a second, is this, kind of like what the job world is? Like, are they really going to be telling me that, okay, I don't care about what you have during this time. I don't care how important it is. I don't care, what's going on. Unless, it's a wedding or a funeral, like you're not taking off." So that's kind of like how that kind of really opened my eyes to entrepreneurship. And then the second instance was I was working at Costco, and I was pulling in like 15, 16 carts at a time. And these were like heavy carts. And they just rope, and you attach the rope to the first or second cart, and you're like basically pulling them. And just so happened, this was like the middle of July, so it's burning up outside. Just so happened, I'm pulling in carts left and right, and I take like a 5-minute break, and the general manager for the store, she's never in, at the store, but just so happened, time I take my break, she comes in, or she walks by me. I had never seen her before, but she walks by me, goes to the supervisor and tells the supervisor, "Hey, the guy that's pulling the carts in, he's outside, not even working." And they called me in, and this is within my first 90 days, so they can let you go for anything. So they brought me in and just told me, "Hey, so many words, we got to let you go. We were told you weren't, pulling carts in." And so I had a friend that worked there, and he told me that night that basically they all talked about it, and they were like talking about how unfair it was because I was the only one out there pulling carts, and they told me that I can come by in the morning and basically get my job back. And long story short, I was just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not about to be, mistreated and then think that I'm just gonna go back to being buddy buddy with y'all, knowing that it was unfair in the first place because y'all knew how hot it was outside. So once that happened, that was kind of like the icing on the cake. Like, okay, I got to find something that I can do, for my own, within my own standards or my own means, and not being on anybody else's terms. And that, when I saw that, the power of entrepreneurship and what it allowed me to be able to do, I was like, okay, I can really hit the ground running with this. And yeah, that really just got me off and running.
So, was there a moment you realized you were building something bigger than yourself?
I think when I first started, there was this company. I don't know if you heard of Organo Gold.
No.
Yeah, so it's still around. It's called Organo now, but I was 21 years old, and my dad, he had already gotten started with. It was a healthy coffee business. So at this time it was like, because it's in the network marketing field, and that was my first time, even looking at the network marketing business, and there were like hundreds, thousands of people at some of these meetings, and I was just like, wow, some of the things that they were saying, it was like it started opening my eyes to, okay, well, this can be, just the way that they're talking, just being around these people, even though it was a certain company, like if you just put the company aside, just being able to hear these people in the flesh, like saying certain things, it was almost like, you were going to church, and, because a lot of people, they'll knock the church, but they're not understanding the importance. And so that's what I got from going to these meetings. Though I was like really listening, because sometimes I'll hang out around people and they'll say, "Oh, Reggie, you're so quiet." And one reason why I'm quiet constantly is because I'm constantly listening and learning. So I'm able, when I am speaking, I'm usually saying something of importance and value. Like, I'm not just out here just talking to be rambling. And so when I was going to these meetings, I was like really listening, and a lot of the things that they were saying was like, oh wow, this is bigger than entrepreneurship. This is like, I started looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, well, I could really leave a legacy based off of doing XYZ, because that's when I really started understanding exponential growth and exponential numbers. This is before, I started on it, because Instagram really took off, I want to say when 2015. And that's when I started seeing like, okay, the importance of going viral, like, and what going viral really meant was exponential growth, which I'd already seen, when I was 20, 21 years old, at my first network marketing meeting. Because when I understood that exponential growth could take me from, being 50K a year earner to like a million a year earner, because I wasn't even thinking about making $1 million in a year until I really understood exponential growth. And that's kind of like Instagram now is like going viral is just, oh, you put out a video and 10 people loved it, and of those 10, 5 people said send it to their friends, and those 5 people have 20 friends. And so then when I started understanding that, I was like, that really opened my eyes. Okay, well, this can be way bigger than me, because now it doesn't feel like I'm gonna have the weight of the world on my shoulders. This is like something that can be done, just me, and maybe a few other people, but it's not something that, before, like where I was, in high school, I was thinking like, oh, the only way I can make $1 million is if or if I start a company and it turns into like Microsoft or something. But now it's like, okay, this is something that's really obtainable. So yeah, that's where I am now.
So, how did your upbringing influence your business style or leadership approach?
Um, so again, like I was saying, my mom, she was a third grade school teacher. Um, I think an impact that had on my business approach is she was always very like structured, and she made sure that I, crossed my T's and dotted my I's. So I think that was one thing that really like stuck with me long term, because one, she didn't, I couldn't embarrass my mom by going to school with her and just slacking. So I had to do things a certain way. I think that helped. And then on the flip side of that, my dad, he was already an entrepreneur. So he kind of, just watching him navigate, and, the amount of effort and work like he was doing, it's before cell phones. So he was doing briefings, he'll do like three-way calls from the house phone, or he'd have a beeper, and the beeper would go off, and that would be like, he would know that he has to get on this call at this time. Or he traveled to different parts of the country just to meet with certain people that he knew could impact his business in a positive way. So growing up in that environment, I had kind of like the best of both worlds. My mom being on that traditional 9 to 5, great career route. And I had my dad who went, he had a good job for, I want to say 13 years. He worked at Hewlett Packard. It was called Digital at the time. But during his time at Hewlett Packard, he ran into network marketing, which opened his eyes to the ability of entrepreneurship. So I was just, blessed to be around them. And then, of course, sports, again, that just brought it all together. And I was able to tie all that into my competitive, fire, and just went off and running with it.
So, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced launching your first venture?
So I would say it was, no, this is an easy one. So when I was with Organo Gold at the time, because I always lean back into this when I'm thinking like, if something's hard, or if I feel like it's not worth it, or if I'm teaching someone that's interested in entrepreneurship, like I know what to look out for now. And the biggest thing that happened to me was when I first saw the what it could possibly do if I did a certain amount of, if I put in a certain amount of work, and I followed the system, and if I did XYZ perfectly, a million times, then eventually it was going to work out for me. So what I did was I was going and talking to everybody. I was trying to move this coffee. It was a healthy coffee, and the way they did it was you would sample it, and I was sampling people left and right. And after like, I want to say 2 months of doing that, I had some pretty good results, but it wasn't what I wanted. And I was I'm talking about 100 people a week easy. And this is like without social media. So I was set back and I was like, dang, maybe this isn't for me because of all the rejections and objections I was getting. I was having to I was getting into debates with people when it came to, is the coffee really healthy? Is it really something that people are going to want, even though we knew Starbucks had lines out the door every morning for $7 cups of coffee. And the coffee I was talking about was pretty much equivalent to $1 a cup, and it was healthy and it tasted good. So I think that was just, one thing that was a big lesson I learned early on was to not, you know, let the highs get too high and the lows get too low, and just stay the course. As long as you stay the course, the only way you lose is if you give up. So that was just my biggest lesson early on, is not to let the hype that and the feeling I had from getting the information. I didn't want that to be all that I was leaning on, because then it's like, okay, I go out here with all this hype and all this excitement. That's easy to knock off. If you run into somebody that is trying to bring you down, that's what's going to happen. So that's where I am though with that.
So, I wanna ask you this question, but I wanna set the stage.
Mhm.
Okay, you actually had a very good foundation, from the beginning. That is, your father's an entrepreneur, your mother's got a career as a teacher. You can't get no better than that because, plain and simple, you're standing on a solid foundation. That's excellent. So, with that being said, can you tell us why would you choose marketing?
Um, are you talking about network marketing or marketing in general?
What network marketing that you do?
All right, so yeah, the main thing again that really appealed to me was the potential and the time freedom. I think the what I saw what my mom was doing in the hours that she was putting in as a teacher, because she was not only teaching, she was teaching in Dunwoody, coming from Alpharetta. So she was getting on 400 South every morning, Monday through Friday, in traffic, and it was taking her an hour and 10 minutes to get to school, to a job that she had to be there for, like, I want to say 7:30 in the morning. So that means she had to be up at like 5:30. So she's up at 5:30 in the morning, and she was doing after school care for a lot of those years as well. So she wasn't even leaving school until like 6 at night. So she was leaving at 6 at night, and she was leaving to go to school 6 in the morning. And I was looking at that like 12 hours a day. And that's not even including the drive home. The drive home was still like, that's rush hour traffic. So that was another hour, 10 minutes to get back. So she wasn't getting back until 7:10 at night. So that really left her with a solid 2-3 hours of free time a day for 5 days a week. And I was like, you know, there's good money in that, but I don't want to dedicate my life to just working. Like I kind of like from an early age, I always looked at life a little different than most, because I really valued where I was, in present time. Like I remember when I was in high school, I was sentimental about, you know, even my senior year in high school, my last football practice, I was soaking it all in, at that time, because I knew, a lot of high schoolers at that time, they were ready to just get out and go to college and, start becoming an adult and just be able to roam free. But I knew at the time, I was like, well, I'm never gonna be a high schooler again. Like this is gonna be my last year of just being really a kid. And after this, it's like I'm an adult basically for the rest of my life. And so just seeing that from my mom, just seeing the hours that she put in, and even though it was good money, it wasn't the money that I was really looking for. And we grew up in a nice house. The house, it wasn't like a mansion or anything, but at the time, my parents, they got it for like 180, and now it's probably worth around like 500,000-600,000. But the houses in that area alone, and some of my friends that I grew up with, like they were like living in mansions, and I was like, that kind of opened my eyes to that also. So I had like a number of things that really like opened my eyes to entrepreneurship, because I knew what was uh I knew what was available to me in the world, and I knew that I had a vehicle to get there. So I think that's what really like set my eyes on network marketing, because I'm like, okay, well, this is pretty much entrepreneurship, and it's pretty much something that I can do without having to go to school for 5, 6 years, or something that I had to put in 100 hours a day or 100 hours a week, and for results that are good but not phenomenal.
So in doing the network marketing, so what is your approach to the areas, the things that you market, and how you get those out there? What is your approach to network marketing?
Okay, so yeah, so like you said, with so I do stem cell reactivation patches. Um,
Mhm.
a company called LifeWave. My main approach right now has been, and something I've gotten the most results with, has been utilizing my conversations with people that I pick up during Lyft or Uber. So that's one reason. Well, that's really the main reason why I do Lyft and Uber. I also like the idea of being able to, because I'm a night owl. I like driving at night anyway. So I was like, well, I might as well
Oh
make.
wow.
Definitely when they have these big events like weekend, there was they call it Shaky Knees now, but it was Music Midtown, a festival they do at Piedmont Park every year, and they have like hundreds of thousands of people come out there each year. And so I'll do events like that, and I could easily make 60, $70 an hour. So I was like, okay, well, I can use Uber and Lyft, and I can just market, and I can network with people. And because just like, I'll start a conversation. The way I do it, I'll start a conversation with someone. I'll ask them, what kind of work do they do? 9 times they'll tell me what they do, and then they'll ask me what I do. So then, okay, well, now I can explain what it is I do, because I know they're going to ask me, well, what is that? So I'll say, hey, well, my dad and I, we got started with this stem cell reactivation patch company, and not 10 times out of 10, whoa, what's that? That sounds interesting. So I'll tell them a little bit about what it is, and I'll say, okay, the patch, it goes on like a size of a quarter. It helps reactivate your stem cells, because the body was designed to heal itself. So all it's doing is basically helping you, heal from the inside out. So like if you put a patch on, it helps reactivate your stem cells, and whatever, it helps with immune deficiencies. It helps with muscle problems, joint problems. There are people that, like my sister, she does it as well. But one story that really caught my eye with her was she ran into a girl who has autism, and she gave her the patch. She tried it out. And like within like 4 or 5 days, her mom told my sister that, this was the first time that she was able to do her laundry without, really falling asleep, and, or just going off and doing whatever. Like she was able to really stay focused. And she was also able to comb through her hair without getting sidetracked. So it helped with psychological issues as well. So I would tell people certain, testimonies, because I'll say something like, the way we got started, my dad, he had a bad knee pain for 3 years, and he was trying all kind of different, ointments, physical treatment, or physical therapy, and nothing was really working. And then within his friend, he gave him some patches to try out, and like within 3 days, a lot of his pain was alleviated. So uh, people would be like, "Wow, I have some knee pain, or I have back pain," and so we get in a conversation about that. And by the end of the ride, they're, well, how can I get information? And then we go from there. So that's what.
So tell us a little bit more about that patch, because I mean that is that's really really interesting, and it sounds like something that there are an enormous amount of people that may be in search of some things to help them out. That this could definitely be something to help them out. Like, tell us a little bit more about that, and basically, if there are pros and cons, and what actually started. How did you guys actually come up with this concept?
Okay, yeah. So basically, so we're mainly distributors. So my dad, again, was given patches by his long-term friend. Sadly passed about a year ago. Oh no, about 4 months ago. But he had cancer. So, but what happened was he gave my dad some patches to try out, and my dad tried them out. And at first, my dad was kind of like, skeptical, like, bro, I've been having pain in this knee for like 3 years. You're telling me this patch is gonna basically, you know, make this pain go away? There's no way. But, my dad being a good friend, he was like, okay, he's gonna give it a try. So he gave it a try. He put the patch on, and within 3 days, his pain was alleviated. So it was like, oh wow, this patch might actually be legit. And so my sister, she played softball at University of South Carolina, and she had two surgeries. One was a hip surgery, one was she had a torn shoulder labrum. So she would have like this range of motion pain, from having the surgeries. And my dad gave her some to try out. And she was like, she was able to move her shoulder. She was like, oh, well, it's actually not hurting as much. And so that kind of like locked us in, because we were like, wow, if it's working for both of them, it's like, oh, this thing must be legit. So that locked us into doing it, and we were in like really like getting behind it and pushing it. But just the testimonies that came after that were just phenomenal. My dad has one of his best friends had congestive heart failure from complications with diabetes, and the doctors pretty much gave him like 6 months to live. And my sister actually uploaded his testimony on the YouTube, and it kind of like took off a little bit. But watching his A1C and his glucose numbers improve like they did, and the fact that his doctors were like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because he had a pacemaker installed, and the pacemaker was basically not, doing anything. Like he was like, his heart was working 89% on its own within like the first 6 months of him wearing the patch. And I was just like, when that happened, I was like, okay, this is bigger than, relieving some pain in your, your shoulder or your knee. Like this is like something that can really add years to people's lives. And I think, again, with my values strong on time and health, and the fact that it was as lucrative, like the potential was as lucrative as it was like a no-brainer to me, because I was like, one, this is really helping people with their health inside out. Two, it was something that I didn't need to really be at a set location for a set amount of hours to really do this. Like I could do this from anywhere. If I'm playing pickleball, I could share this with, some of the people that's playing pickleball that's having, aches and pains. Or if I'm doing an Uber ride, I can, I have somebody that's in my car that more than likely, if they're not going through any type of pain, they know someone that's going through pain. Their parents are probably going through pain. So it just became like an obvious choice for me to go ahead and go through with it once I saw the results from the patch and the things that it was helping people do. My mom, it helped her tremendously when she was having, she would have headaches, like not often, but she was having them a good bit, and she started wearing them, helped her with that. She didn't snore, because she would snore before the patch, but she started wearing that. She was like, because my sister, she told me, she was like, Mom's not snoring anymore. I'm like, wow, that's wild. So it was it was just like a lot of stuff that was just like, okay, wow, this is really helping a lot, because it was one of the things that also helped people. There were people with sleep apnea. So I was like, wow, this is, it's a host of things. Like there were testimonies that I was hearing that for situations that I didn't even know existed. So when that started happening, I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know, there was a name for, that, or there was a, some type of side effect from, because some of these people they're on these medications, and the side effects are worse than the pain that they're getting the medication for. So it's just like, once I saw that, the ability of the patch to really help with a lot of these different situations, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And once I started seeing the business side and how lucrative it was, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely all in on this.
Well, I got a question here for you in the chat. I'm going to put it on the screen. It's from IMTV360. It says, I want to try a sample. How much does it cost? What are the possible side effects and benefits?
Cool. Yeah. So actually, like I was saying with the coffee business, the way I can, mail the sample wherever you are. If you're in the Atlanta area, I can, drop them off. But that's how we do the business. I would have a sleeve on me. The sleeve, it has 30 patches in the sleeve. So with the sleeve, you'll have the sleeve is $100. So plus shipping, it comes out to like $115. So it comes out to like $3 per patch. And the patch, like I'll give somebody like 3, maybe 4 patches at a time. So that's like 4 days worth of patches. And I'll tell them the way it works is you put it on for 12 hours, you take it off for 12 hours, throw it in the trash, and then you'll go to the next one. So it's kind of like, and they'll ask like, why do you take it off for 12 hours? Is because you don't want your body to become dependent on the patch. It's just like if you take melatonin to help you sleep at night, you don't want to take melatonin like, every night. You want to just mainly take it when you really need to go to sleep and you can't sleep, because you don't want your body to be, oh, where's the melatonin so I can sleep? You want your body to be able to, really do what it's supposed to do on its own. So yeah, it's the side, there are no real side effects to it. The only thing that they haven't tested were people that are, if you're on chemotherapy or if you're pregnant. So if you're not even one of those things, there's no real side effects. You do want to drink a lot of water when you do take them, or when you do wear the patch. But outside of that, yeah, you just live, your day to day like it's, normal business.
So, did you ever feel underestimated in business spaces because of your background?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So there are two real instances. And I think so. For the first one, I'll go off of being a young black man. Um, it's like, so and again, I played pickleball. I had this membership to this place called Ace in Roswell, and Ace is an indoor pickleball facility, 16 courts. They're open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I was like, this is great. Um, but they charge $140 a month. So at first it was like a deterrent, because I was like, am I really gonna be playing this much pickleball to really make the value be there for me? But then I was like, but $140 a month means there's going to be people in there that I can network with, that I know have some real connections, real networks, real money that could possibly like catapult my business. And so I went ahead and I did it. And because I joined, I want to say May of last year. I just, and I, been going over. I haven't been going as much over the past couple months, but yeah, I was going like, I want to say 3-4 times a week. Sometimes I was going 5 times a week, and I was in there like, I'm talking anywhere from 3 hours to 5 hours at a time sometimes, because one, I was finally getting my, a real good workout in on a consistent basis, but two, I was really building connections. And so they were, I was going in there and I was knowing pretty much half the people in there within my first couple months. But um that would, I could kind of tell, like when I'm talking to people, sometimes they'll look at me and it's almost like they're hearing me, but they're not really listening. And part of it, and I would like, because when I was in college, one of my favorite courses was psychology. And
Oh, wow.
yes, so psychology, and my professor at the time, she was like really impressed with like how I really took on that class, and because it really didn't have to do with my major at the time, but I knew being able to read people would help me long term in entrepreneurship. So, and that's another reason why I'm quiet. Like I don't talk much, because one, I'm listening, two, I'm reading. So if I'm not talking, I'm more than likely listening and reading you, and I'm reading your body language, because most people can kind of like, they can hide behind their words, but most people can't hide behind their words and their body language. Like they're either going to be good at one or the other, but they're not going to be good at both. And I can kind of tell, like, a lot of times when I would talk to people, they'll say certain things, and it's like, I feel like this is like just a blanket response because you're just trying to, get along with the conversation, but you're not really like attention and, giving me the, the value that you would if I were an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos in your eyes. Like I could tell these people, like they would look at me and they're like, oh, you're just, a young black man that's, trying to find his way. And I'll be, all right, cool. But I think that was just one of the things. And then the second thing was driving Lyft and Uber. Like, even though I have a nice vehicle, people would still kind of like formulate their own opinion of who they think that I am. And but some people would come out, they'll be like, dang, you're driving this, why are you, what else do you do? Because this is like a conversation starter. They'll say, what else do? You have to be doing something else because I know they're not paying Uber drivers this much. Like some people come out and say that. And then some people, there was one guy in particular, he was like, he was in town for a concert and he was from South Georgia. He was with his wife and it was like a quick ride. It might've been a 5-minute ride. And he pretty much was just like, he came out after we talked for like maybe 3 minutes. He was like, why are you driving Uber when you're this bright? And I was like, and I knew where he was coming from. But so this is another thing that I kind of learned over time. Like I wouldn't say I was, because I was never really a hothead, but I would have like this more of like a sensitive side to where certain things would bother me quick. And once I learned that I didn't need to be bothered, like me being bothered really wasn't solving problems. Like it wasn't making me better in any way. So I stopped being sensitive towards things and I started like going more investigative side. Like if somebody would say something to me, instead of me being reactive to it, I would say to myself, like, why would they say this? Like, where are they coming from with this? And then the more times certain things would happen, then I'd have more of a response almost immediately, like, okay, and now I'd be prepared. So with him, I was just like, it's funny you say that, but I don't do Uber and Lyft for the money. I do it to build connections because I know your network is your net worth, and the connections that I build along the way. I know I can't build these connections just by going out and going to a bar and meeting people at the bar. Like I can only do that, a few times a week. But if I'm doing Uber or Lyft, I know I'm picking up 10 to 12 people a day or night. And if I do that 5 times a week, I'm coming across 50 to 60 people a week, brand new people that I would not have met, in any other moment. So once I started breaking that down, and then I broke down the strategy behind how I do Uber and Lyft, because I told them, I was like, I also like doing the weekends, and I like doing nights, and I like doing events. The reason why I do weekends, nights, and events is because weekends, that's when most people are outside doing activities, of course. Mm-hmm. I do nights because there's no real traffic, so I don't have to worry about time being a factor as to how much money I make. Then I do events because I know the demand is going to be way higher than the supply. No matter how many drivers we have come to Atlanta for an event, I know the demand is going to be way higher than that. And I'll look at the map and I'll say, oh, this is surging, because the way they do it, they'll show a map and it will show, hey, this area they're paying +5, +10, +15. So just like I said about shaky knees this weekend, it was +20 and +25 for like 2 hours, which is how I was able to make, almost $100 an hour because I was in that area at that time. And I'm like, if you can go get you an extra $200-300 for the week and build a connection, while you're doing it, it's just like a no-brainer to me. So yeah, those are the two components of, my background being like, oh, it might be something that people will look at before they, decide to, do business with me.
Well, I have another question here in the chat. This one's from Blake. Let me show it to you. He says, is there an affiliate program for your product? An interested party wants to know.
So basically, the product, I'm not sure if you heard before, but it's pretty much network marketing. So it's just like affiliate marketing. I'm familiar with affiliate marketing. It's the same concept, but it's more like, okay, if you have a product, it's just when one compared to is like referral uh, for an apartment. If you buy an apartment and they'll say, hey, we'll pay you $500 if you tell your friend to, come move in, and they move in, and time they sign their lease, they will pay you $500. It's almost the same concept, but it's way more lucrative. And the way it works is we sell the subscription to the product. So a subscription, like I said, is 30, you get 30 patches in a sleeve. And that will last for a whole month because it's 30 patches. You wear one patch per day. And so when you sell the subscription, it's just like it takes off from there. So, like, let's say, for example, when I got started, the first person I told about it, or I got started with it, was my sister. So I about it, she got started, and when she got started, I was able to get paid commission on just her signing up and getting started. Well, what happens when my sister gets started and she enjoys the product and the product's helping her? She'll go tell her friends, some of our family members. She beat me to some of our aunts and uncles. So she'll go tell them. So before you know it, when she signs up 4 people, I'm getting paid commissions. Of course, those commissions are smaller as go deeper, but that's really how it works. Once you tell one person about it or 2 people about it, those 2 people are going to go to their networks, their friends and family, and they're going to tell people. So before you know it, you could have 100 people within your organization, and you only knew maybe 5 of them, to get started with. So that's really how the affiliate type of program works with LifeWave, the stem cell reactivation patches. It's just really about sharing the product and sharing the testimonies. And we have Zoom presentations every night. There's actually one tonight that my dad's doing. But yeah, we do them every night throughout the week. I believe the only day off is, and it's not really a day off because we'll have in-person meetings on Saturdays. Every other Saturday, we'll do an in-person meeting in Norcross. So we have information on that, and then we'll have a training that Saturday. But Sunday through Friday is, we'll have overview Zoom. So we don't have to go out and, like, if I just get started, I don't have to go out and know what somebody like me knows about the product already. All I have to do is say, hey, I just got started with this program or these patches. I want you to take a look at it. Tell me what you think. And you'll just plug that person onto that Zoom, and the Zoom does all the work because that's that's going to be the expert that explains how it works. And once they're done with the Zoom, most people that get on the Zoom, right after, they're trying to figure out how they can get started. So the only, and it's not even a hard part though, but the only part that's like, that makes this like, okay, some people would say, oh, what's the catch? This sounds too good to be true. The only hard part about this really is just inviting. Like, when you invite somebody, a lot of times people will say, oh, I'll get on, or I'll do this, or I'll come to the meeting. And then next thing you know it, oh, they found out, oh, they had to go to a birthday party, so they couldn't make it, or, they had to go walk their dog, so they couldn't, get on the Zoom, all kind of like, scenarios. But once people get on the Zoom, more than likely they're interested in getting started. So.
We'll have another comment here in the chat from Dr. Whitty. I'll show it on the screen. He says, I made good money driving Lyft too. I only hated it when I was ready to stop for the night. I'd always get an out of town trip.
Oh yeah. So that's one thing I like to tell people is the strategy behind Lyft and Uber. And I think, because I think one thing that scares people that do Uber, because I have a friend that I just put on the Uber, and even to this day, he kind of like, he'll get scared about canceling rides or declining rides. But I get like my account right now, it shows my cancellation rate is probably like, it's not that crazy. I think it's maybe 20%, but the rides, my acceptance rate is like maybe 3%. And the way I do my acceptance is I have to make sure the ride, one, benefits me. So if the ride doesn't benefit me, to a T, I usually don't take it. So, and by that, by what I mean by that is, if a ride is going like, okay, if it's going in in a particular area or direction that I want to go to, then I'll take the ride. You know, I don't really look at the dollar amount. But if I'm doing a certain ride, it has to pay out, you know, what I think is fair. So, and the one thing that I go by, or the one like um, strategy I like to use is I'll say, okay, if it's paying 2x, then I can kind of like debate with myself if I want to take it. But I'm really looking for 3x and more. So by 3x and more, I mean it has to be, if it's a 3 mile ride, I want to be getting paid at least $9, and that's a definite goal. So if it's a 10 mile ride and they're saying, oh, we'll pay you $12, I'm not accepting that. So that's the way I really do it. And you know, some people uh, they'll get cash hungry and they'll not understand that it's hurting them in the long run. So you don't want to just, you know, put the wear and tear on your car for dollars that's not really making sense. Like you really want it to be worth it. If you're going to put, you know, 100 miles on your car, you want to make sure you're making at least 200, 250, $300 for that 100 miles. So that's really how, you know, my rule of thumb, you know. And if it's a ride that's going out of the way and I want to stop for the night and it's a good ride, like if it's a good ride, then that's one thing. But if it's a ride that's really not paying what I think is fair, I'm just going to decline it and, you know, go home for the night and go to sleep.
Well, we also discussed that, we do Black History 365. And I asked you, who's the most influential person in your life and career? You told me when it comes to your life, you said Jackie Robinson.
Mhm.
And for all the other, but as far as your career, that there were many other folk. Can you tell us why is Jackie Robinson the most influential figure in Black history for you?
Again, you know, just, you know, growing up, it goes back to baseball. I think baseball being such a large portion of growing up, I think definitely the area I grew up in when it was where it's predominantly white, just seeing what Jackie Robinson went through and how he overcame that, um and the things that he did while, you know, striving for greatness, it was just like, okay, it kind of made my journey seem like a piece of cake, even though, you know, there are some people that would, you know, say, hey, man, you play baseball in, you know, Alpharetta or in Forsyth County. Like, I know that I could never do that. Like, I've heard people, you know, they would say that to me, like, you know, just hearing what they heard, you know, from those communities, it was just like they wouldn't even go near it. And me looking at, again, being more on the side of, okay, well, instead of looking at how wrong it can go, let's look at how right it can go. And by taking that approach and looking at Jackie Robinson and what he went through, I was like, well, I'm not going through what Jackie Robinson went through, so this is going to be a piece of cake. So that's kind of like how I looked at it. And so with him, you know, really like laying the foundation and really like showing that, hey, you know, Black Americans can play baseball also. Like, it was just like, all right, you know, it made it more comfortable for me. I think that's, and it's kind of like Joe Hamilton. Like Joe Hamilton played quarterback at Georgia Tech. That
Yep.
he opened my eyes to Georgia Tech because I never really grew up a Georgia Bulldogs fan. I grew up Georgia Tech fan first, and then LSU fan second. Ironically, that was my first college football game, was the 2000 Peach Bowl between Georgia Tech and LSU. And when I went to the game, because it was at the Georgia Dome at the time, and Nick Saban took out this quarterback. His name was John Davis, I believe, and he
John
put
David Moody.
yeah, and he put in Roland Davey,
Yes, he
and
did.
this was at halftime, and I was in when it happened. When it happened, I was, you know, I'm a Georgia Tech fan at the time, and I was looking around, and the LSU fans started going crazy. I'm like, because Georgia Tech was up at the time, and I was like, why are these fans going crazy? Like, do they know something we don't know about this guy? Sure enough, he came in and just took over the game, and I was like, you know, wow, for him to do that on that stage, and again, it being a Black quarterback, I was like, okay, well, let me look at this LSU program and this Nick Saban guy, because he seems to like really have some courage to do something like that. Because at the time, like growing up, definitely in Alpharetta, it was like being a black quarterback wasn't something that you really thought was possible. By the way, some of these things, some of these things that I would hear, like, there would be these remarks where they'll say, black guys, they couldn't really play quarterback because, again, the whole intellectualness thing, they would try to spin it, make it sound cute, but in so many words, they're saying we're not smart enough to play the quarterback position at a high level. So Joe Hamilton opened my eyes to that. Then the Rohan Davey, and then ironically, right after that, we draft Michael Vick, and he just takes over the city of Atlanta. So it's just like, once all that happened, that was on the football side. And then you had the Jackie Robinson on the baseball side. For me, I was just like, okay, well, again, sports being as big of a part of my life as it was growing up, I was just like, yeah, these are some really like, big time figures that just made me look at life, through a completely different lens.
Well, I'll tell you this: Joe Hamilton was actually he was an inspiration because being a little guy like he was, Joe played big.
Oh yeah,
And I gotta tell you, I was kind of upset that he didn't actually get the real opportunity to play in the league. But he
yeah,
was really a good guy.
yep, that's very true.
What part of Jackie's story resonates most deeply with your own journey?
Hmm. I think it was mainly when he was going through what he was going through, he still had, again, back to the village raising a child story, he still had some figures that were just like took them under his wing. Like I don't know if you saw the Jackie Robinson movie, but like when he was, uh standing at second base and one of his teammates just put his arm around him and uh showed the fans that were booing him like, hey, he's here, he's one of our teammates, we're going to be, we're going to stand behind him, 100%. Like I had teammates that were kind of like that for me, that they just, it was one thing to be on a team with other players that were like, of course it was an all-white team 9 times out of 10, because only I think through my 12 years, because I played baseball from 5 to 17, and all 12 years, I think I may have had 3 black teammates. And I was like, okay, I could, there would be teams where there would be that tension, like, and I could tell that I wasn't really like wanted on the team. But there were times where like I was really embraced and, by players that were, one of the best players on the team. And just seeing, that, the important and feeling that and how important that was as far as my confidence and on the field play, like I just knew, okay, well, it was big for Jackie to have that kind of support, even though he was, it seemed like he was out there by himself at times, which he was from the dynamic of, he was the only black person out there, but just having that, support from his white counterparts, it literally, could do wonders for, an athlete that's feels like sometimes, it's just, do I really need to be out here? Like, is it worth it, being out here? And when you have that, that encouragement and that reminder that, you're wanted and, needed on the team to help achieve a common goal, I think that's just, that does magic.
How did his courage and discipline shape your mindset?
Um, I think this being a big word, because what he did was he showed that you, again, it goes back to that being reactive. You don't want to be reactive in every situation, because I think one thing that he was able to do, I think he was able to understand the large part of the whole situation and say, hey, okay, these people have this programming, and they might not be personally looking at me like, oh, I just don't like him. He understood that they were programmed to say, hey, I don't like who he is and where he's from and what his background or his ethnicity is. Like that's what they don't like. So he understood, oh, this isn't a personal attack on me, but they're just programmed to be racist, basically. So it's just like, okay, now that discipline can translate into other areas of life. All right, so this guy over here doesn't like me because, I'm on the football team. Like I've had people, tell me, because one thing that I did in high school was I was kind of what you call a floater. And that's like I was friends with like all groups of people. Like you had um they had the nerds, the band geeks, we had the Hispanics, we had the what is it, the emo kids. Like I was friends with all of them. So
You
I
was just
never
a socialite.
yeah. So I was like never like, just not going to talk to somebody because we didn't have common interests. So one thing that did for me was I was constantly like aware of who didn't really like me like that. And one thing that got back to me was that kind of like stuck with me over the time was this one guy said, oh, the only reason why the girls like him is because he's on the football team. And I was just like, okay, well, at first I was like, man, this is a guy that I thought was kind of like not my friend, but like we've talked on multiple occasions, and I didn't think he had anything like negative to say about me. But when I found that out, I was just like, okay, instead of me being mad and like going and confronting him about it, I was like, dang, well, maybe he feels like that because he's programmed to think that the only reason why people like me or girls like me is because I'm on a football team. That's just something that he needed to kind of like work out within himself. So I'm not just going to be like, okay, well, and it goes back to that conversation that I had with my friend about the whole code switching thing, because the way I started that conversation off was I said, we have to start like getting out of our emotions and stop looking at, you know, what's right or wrong. Cause we're going to constantly be, because one thing that would happen would be this guy, he would, get into his emotions, and his brother too. Like he has a brother that would kind of like, and his brother was more on the emotional side than he was. But when you let your emotions really control your day to day, then you're not really going to be at true peace. And that's what he says that he's looking for. Because one thing he would lean into is, he just wants peace. But when he's constantly letting these things that are happening, that might be quote unquote negative, he might say, oh, like, this isn't right, something like that. So I started off that conversation with him, like, it's not so much about being right or wrong. Sometimes you just got to take it for what it is and see your best way of fitting in that arena. And if you feel like you just can't fit in, just go into the next arena. Like you don't need to sit there and try to like, get mad at the fact that this arena is designed like this. Like it's so many different arenas out here that you don't really need to, entertain or put all your energy into that basket if you don't need to. So, and that's why that discipline word is just big, because it also helped through football. Because football, when I was able to really like understand, hey, I can be reactive and I can get mad at a guy that I felt threw a dirty block or hit me a certain way, and the play was blown dead or whatever like that. Like, but I know if I react to it, I'm more than likely going to get flagged, and I'm going to cost my team 15 yards. So just being able to be, disciplined enough, I think on the field, that helped me big time, like off the field. Cause now I know, okay, well, I can be mad about something and I can respond to it with emotion, but I know that's just going to compound a problem, and nothing's ever like that. So that's why.
Do you see parallels between breaking barriers in sports and in business?
Um, yeah, I mean, like I said, the the way sports, um, let's see how I should say this, because there's a comparison that I want to use. Um, so I'll use the kickball team. So the kickball team is it's it's comprised of players from the ages of, I think my sister, she's the youngest. She's 27. The oldest person is 50. But the majority of the team, they're anywhere from like 30 to 35. So that's the main age group. And I was noticing like, and I was telling my friend, because what happened was I joined the team and it was my friend's team. And he was like, when I joined, I missed their first game and they lost the first game. So I joined for the second game and we lost 1-0, but we hung out after and he was kind of like upset. And I was like, well, why are you so upset? And he was like, man, we lost, And I was like, oh, I didn't know, you were trying to be like really competitive with this. I thought this was like a social beer league type of thing. Like I didn't know that y'all really wanted to come out here to win because, if that's what you want to do, like I know what we need to work on and things that we need to do, just from the baseball background. Because a lot of them, they didn't play baseball growing up like that. So they didn't understand, basic baseball concepts like, tagging up and, what to do when you have a runner on second and the ball's, bunted to third base or kicked to third base. And so we literally, like, after that next game, we won the next game. But after that game, we spent 2 hours going over all the fundamentals of baseball or kickball. And we ended up winning the championship that season. But we're in season 5 now. We won 2 championships, and then we came in second place the other 2 seasons. So right now we're 2-2 in the championship games. But I started learning more about people through this kickball atmosphere, not just with my team, but with other teams also. Like, and one thing because I tell my sister all the time, I'll say, it's interesting seeing people. You would think some of these issues would end when you hit 22, 23 years old, but there are people that are on, my team or on other teams. They're like 35, 36 years old, and they're still like on this. They still have this like mindset, like they're still in high school. Like some of the stuff that you would think that, you're getting well past. And I'm like, okay, well, if they're like this in kickball, that means they're like this in everything else they do, whether it's business, their job, their family, like just everyday life. And I was like, I was kind of blown away because this was my first time really playing on
That's me.
adult league team. Say that again.
That's me.
Okay.
The spirit of competition is real.
Yeah, and it's, I was trying to explain to them. I was like, because one thing that they got kind of definitely people now is like they get misconstrued about the word competitive. Like a lot of people think being competitive means, oh, you get really mad when you lose. And I'm like, that's not being competitive. Being competitive is one, you'll do anything to learn from that loss. Like if you lose, hey, what are you going to do to get better next time so you don't lose again? There are people out here that think that, oh, since we lost, this guy threw a temper tantrum and ran to the car and drove off because he's really competitive. I had to tell them that doesn't make you competitive. That makes you a sore loser, and it means that you just had a temper tantrum because you lost. One of my favorite movies of all time is Remember the Titans, and one of the lines that always stuck out from that movie was Denzel telling one of the players that a fifth grade girl can throw a temper tantrum or can get angry, and it's basically about what do you do with that anger is what makes you pretty much, real, elite athlete or a better player, better man, whatever it is. But that's one thing I learned, the parallel between sports and business is just, the mindset, and I didn't realize what real Mamba mentality was until I got older. Because before I used to watch Kobe play basketball. I'd be like, man, this guy's just arrogant. Like, I don't even like him just because of how arrogant he was on the court. And then I started understanding where this arrogance came from. And a lot of it just came from him knowing that 99% of the players that stepped on the court, whether it was on his team or the other team, they weren't putting the work in that he was putting in. So if he knows that somebody on his team isn't putting the same amount of work in as him, of course he's not going to pass you the ball in the clutch because he knows that he just spent 6 hours the previous day shooting that exact shot, regardless if there's a defender in his face or not. So he's going to feel more confident in taking that shot versus passing it to a wide open player that's, at the 3-point line or whatever. Because I used to watch him and I'll be like, man, this guy doesn't pass the ball to his teammates, and he has this arrogant attitude. And then when I got older, I started understanding, like, okay, now this makes sense why he was like this on the court. And it was just like, one of those things where I was watching some of these grown people on this kickball team, and I was just like, man, it's kind of disappointing knowing that there are people out here that are going through life not even understanding that, one, you're out here just going about life mindset that everything's just supposed to come to you, or you deserve to be, in the spotlight, or you deserve certain things just because you put yourself in a position, like with a jersey, or you're on a team, or you're in that business, or you're in that network. Like, no, you still have to go out and you have to execute certain strategies. You have to put in, X amount of hours. You have to do X amount of research. Like when I started playing pickleball, like I'm sitting there, like people were trying to figure out how I got good in pickleball so fast. Cause like I got started with, I started in the beginner league with my partner, and I signed up. I signed up for that league 10 days after I started playing pickleball. By the time the league started, people were looking at me like, "Why are you in the beginner league?" And I was like, "Well, I signed up when I was 10 days in, but of course, I think the league may have started a month after I started playing. And by the time the league started, they're looking at me like, oh, this guy needs to be at least on the if not advanced. So, or in the intermediate league, if not advanced. So I'm like, one reason why I got there was because when I kind of fell in love with it. I was like, I'm watching YouTube videos of strategies when it comes to pickleball. I'm not just going out here. A lot of people they'll get a paddle, they'll just go out there and they'll play, and they're not even trying to think the game. Like one thing that makes LeBron so great is his IQ, and it gets overshadowed because of how dominant of a player he is as far as his ability to run, his ability to jump, his size, his jump shot, his playmaking ability. His IQ is probably his strongest asset, and a lot of people don't even know that because they're too busy watching him, run and dunk and shoot. But when I got on the pickleball court, I'm sitting there, I'm talking about I was spending like 3-4 hours a day watching YouTube clips or YouTube videos, and my algorithm on Instagram was pickleball, 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 and people were coming out like, dang, you're not only good at hitting the ball, but you're understanding like when to hit certain shots, when not to hit certain shots. And it's because, I have that real competitive desire to want to get good at something that I'm, partaking in. So that's where I am with that.
To the comment where you was talking about, the guy in the spirit of competition that stormed out and so forth. Dr. Whitty just left this comment where he said that makes you immature.
Exactly.
And final question for you is, what does Black excellence mean to you?
What does excellence mean to me? I'm a rip. It's funny how that conversation I told you I had with that friend, like how much I pulled from that conversation to be able to talk about it on this platform. Literally, like we had that conversation maybe a week ago, and so it's just ironic. Like I'm able to reference something that's this fresh, but I'm gonna reference this again. I think one, Black excellence is just showing people what our potential is, and one thing I think that it's like it's pretty much a norm, or it's known within our community. We know that we are better together, and we know that we are, we could basically just really like do amazing things if we didn't have so much division within our community. But in the conversation I had with my friend, he said, well, and at this point it was more so about the Black quarterback. And I was telling him, I was like, man, um, we were on the subject because he's a big time Ravens fan, and I was talking about, you have a Lamar Jackson, you have, Patrick Mahomes, you have, you know Kyler Murray, now Bryce Young, you have Jalen Hurts. Like, we are having like black quarterbacks. This is like the most important position in all of sports, and it's a position that we were looked at not smart enough to play at a high level. And one thing that he responded to after I went into all that was, I just wish that we would stop trying, or we cared, if we just didn't care so much about proving to the white man that we can do something. Like, you know, I think we'd be better off. And then, so my response to that was, and because he was like, he said, well, we just need to put our own league together. And my response to him on that was, yeah, we could put our own league together, but at the same time, you have to understand what goes into that. One, we can't have real division within ourselves and put a league together to quote unquote rival the NFL over the next, 10, 20 years. But that's pretty much what it's going to take to even come close to that. Because the NFL, and I just saw this is another thing. I just saw this like a week ago, and the guy was just talking about how powerful the NFL really is, like from a strictly business standpoint, and how much leverage they have within big time powerful businesses and billionaires all over the country. So I was telling them, I was like, when you talk about because I referenced Deion Sanders. Ironically, my middle name comes from Deion Sanders. My mom named me because he was playing for the Falcons and the Braves the year I was born, 91. And he was living like around the corner when I was in Alpharetta. So she named me Dion, but she took the E out. She just made a Dion to kind of give me my own originality to it. And my first name's named after my dad, Reggie. So and then ironically enough, last night I come across a clip, Deion Sanders talking to Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey on their podcast, and he explained that his actual government name was spelled Dion, and he only E because Old McDonald had a farm song, E-I-E-I-O. So he added the E because he wanted to. But so ironically enough, I am named right after Deion Sanders. And one thing about Deion, so my sister, she ended up going to Jackson State. She was at Purdue. She started off at Purdue her freshman year. The coaches, and this is, how the sports really comes into it. The coach at Purdue was basically like, they told her, hey, if you do well, we'll pay you more money. She ended up being one of the top freshmen in the Big Ten. They tried to put her junior and senior year money, add that on year money, because she wasn't on a full ride, and it was expensive to go to Purdue. Things like $100,000 a year or something crazy like that. But she was like, that's cool and all, but I'm still not going to be able to afford junior and senior year. So, and she always wanted to play in the SEC. So she ended up going to South Carolina. She faced lots of racism as far as like certain things that were being said. I wouldn't say lots. I would say a lot to be playing softball. Like we're talking about fast pitch softball, and it shouldn't even come to that. But long story short, we're because you got to remember she was playing when the George Floyd thing happened. She was there. They were basically using her like, even though they had a couple other black girls on the team, they were like freshmen, so they didn't really want to put them on that or give them that, task. But my sister was kind of like really explaining like social injustice and certain things that would happen or over the years. Like, and she was going into detail because my sister was like real, like she'll get into it. So she ended up, COVID happened, so she had a year because that was going to be her senior year during COVID. And then the following season, it was like all freshmen, sophomore, and maybe a handful of juniors and seniors. So it was more of a rebuild year. And she was already on basically year 6 because she had the 2 red shirts from the surgeries that she had, and then she had COVID. So she was able to get her master's from South Carolina while she was, playing softball because it was paying for all of her education. She was on full ride. So she ended up she said, okay, well, since this is going to be a rebuild year, she wanted to do something special or something different and make it special. And at this time, Dion was at Jackson State, and Travis Hunter had changed his commitment from Florida State to Jackson State the winter break of my sister trying to decide if she wanted to go back to South Carolina for the spring to play softball. And Travis Hunter decided to go to Jackson State. That was like the icing on the cake for us to be like, let's go to Jackson State and try to shine a light on HBCU softball, just like they're trying to shine a light on HBCU football. So she went to Jackson State, and her experience at Jackson State was good in the like almost like the grand scheme of things, I guess, as far as like other teams, but within her own program, like she was facing like all kinds of, like obstacles that I didn't even like factor would be a possibility. Like I didn't factor in because I was like one of the main reasons that she decided to go ahead and go through with it to go to Jackson State, because we were tired of the racism in South Carolina, and then we were like, they're not going to be competitive because they're rebuilding, and they also didn't have the competitive fire. So it's not only are you dealing with a young team that's, you know, mainly freshmen and sophomores, but they didn't even show like the real drive to want to be good. So we were like, yeah, let's go do something different. So I didn't factor in the fact that she was going to go there and she was going to take a lot of the shine because of how good she is, and the other girls would start like hating on her. And so that's kind of what happened. They also had a situation within like the higher ups of the program where it was like almost like, okay, this is how they're running this program. And some of the like things that were happening, I was just like, you know, this is bigger than the fact that they don't have the quote unquote resources that these Power Five schools do. This is like, okay, well, even with what you do have, you're doing XYZ with it, and you're not even factoring in some of the stuff that doesn't even have to deal with money. Like there are things that are happening within this program. It's like the mental health aspect component of the athletes at this university. It's like it's almost not even, you're not even caring about it. Like, okay, so would you feel like you need to have $1 million psychiatrist in order to, you know, care for the needs of some of these, you know, mental health issues that are going on? And sure enough, like during that time, there was a girl that committed suicide at Southern. Like the next day of us going to Jackson State, we were going to go talk to the higher ups, and it wasn't the athletic director, but it was, you know, right below him because he was out of town at the time. And one of the things we wanted to talk to them about was the mental health of some of these athletes and what's going on in this program and the other athletics programs. And long story short, they just kind of like pushed it to the side. And I'm like, I'm looking at all of it because I was already kind of looking sideways at how things were being handled. And I'm like, Dion's not going to be here long. And sure enough, he leaves the next year, and people were like, "Oh, of course he's chasing the money. He wants to take Shador and Shiloh to a Power Five school where they can get more shine. And he never was really for the culture, yada yada yada." And I'm like, y'all have no idea what's going on. Like I knew from what was going on with my sister and what was going on in the athletics department that he wasn't going to stay in there just because of the standard that he sets when it comes to anything in life. And that goes back to that parallel between sports and business. Like the way that Dion was on the field when it came to being one of the greatest to ever do it, that's the standard he sets for life. Like he's not just when he's putting some of these videos out on Instagram, like that's really how he is. And when you have that kind of like expectation on a day-to-day basis, it's not going to mesh well with people that are approaching life with this mediocre mindset. And that's kind of what was happening. And I was just like, okay, well, once I saw that, I was just like, yeah, he's not going to be here long. And then when that happened, it just kind of like showed my sister, you know, it was still a good experience for her to kind of like see what was going on, because at first she was thinking about possibly coaching, HBCU program, but then it was just like, oh, well, it's bigger than just going and coaching and trying to help out an HBCU program, but it's almost like that quote of, in order for me to help you, you got to want to help yourself. And I think that's just one of those things where if you want there to be like true Black excellence, we're gonna have to like really come together and stop getting in our own way of, because one problem that we do have in our community is seeing, okay, well, this is, it's almost like that old saying of people want to see you do well, but never better than them. Like, it
Oh
is,
wow, that's a hater.
yeah, and it's so common, and that's kind of what my argument, or what I was telling my friend, because he was always, he said he was wondering what was going on with it, because he didn't know from the beginning if Dion was just there for like clout or if he really was for the culture. And so that was my comparison of, okay, well, we're saying we want to start our own league, but you have to understand what goes into that, and part of that is us coming together. We'd have to come together at a high rate, and the execution has to be top tier, because you're going to be asking an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid who has the potential to be one of the greatest, to be the at the forefront of whatever league you create. So now they're going to be taking a big risk of being at the forefront, but now, okay, they're not going to be able to set up their next 5 generations based off the income that they're going to make based on their talent. So all those things have to be factored in. So I was like, okay, well, the quarterback play, I was like, when you understand the importance of top tier quarterback play when it comes to some of these, to the Black quarterbacks, that's when the way I look at it is, because he was looking at it from the aspect of, oh, we got to stop trying to get white approval. And I was like, you have to understand, well, when you have more Black quarterbacks like that's taking over right now, that's going to give the team more leverage, or give the quarterback's going to have the most leverage as to who the head coach is. So when you have more Black head coaches, now you creep into that front office territory, because now it's like, okay, well, Black coaches, what's going on with the Black GMs? Because now it's like, okay, well, at first we weren't smart enough to play the quarterback position.
There are lots of front office people, GMs,
Yeah,
people that's running teams and next to the owner.
yeah,
There's
exactly.
lots of those, but there's a problem with the coaching.
Yeah, yeah, and that's Terry Fontenot. He actually is good friends with my mom's second cousin, so he's the GM for the Atlanta Falcons. But yeah, once the like I said about the quarterbacks, like at first, they didn't think that we were smart enough to be quarterbacks. Same thing with the coaching; they're not smart to be coach. So now we're creeping into getting close to, okay, well, now one day we're going to have to talk about ownership. So once we get more Black ownership, now there's a real potential to like really have an imprint of Black excellence throughout the league, and not just the players on the field. Because
That's never gonna happen.
and the thing is, with that was just like the possibility with that happening versus us making our own league. I just think that the risk would be, really like, it would be a lot to ask, because I compared it to, like, let's say you have a Ronald Acuna Jr. Like, you're going to ask an 18-year-old Ronald Acuna Jr. to, pass up on setting up his generations years to come, to start up a new league that you don't know where it's going to go, but we're going to make him want to be take the sacrifice. And it's like, okay, well, you can take the sacrifice, or you can, try to take over what's really in place right now.
I want you to think about it from this situation. If you got a league that's 80% Black, who are the people coming to see? So if that's who they're coming to see, I will just tell you this: that's where the revenue comes in. So when you're seeing more of those Black quarterbacks, it's because the game has evolved. The athleticism has evolved to a whole new level.
Yeah.
At that level, you are not going to have a statue that's standing back there saying, "Oh, I'm going to stand back here and I'm just going to throw the ball." No, sir, that's not going to happen.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's just over time. But the NFL is a good old white boys club. So
Yeah,
they're never going to let a black owner in. Remember, they got
yeah,
to pay for all the tuition at Morehouse, the IT guy. When he
yeah,
wanted to buy the Vikings, they shut him down. They said absolutely no,
yeah,
absolutely. So that's telling you that's never going to happen.
yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's anytime soon. Of course, I think because again, it goes back to how I was feeling. Like again, money and business is one thing, but like again, it's the same thing as far as a quarterback is concerned. I never thought that the league would be where it is as far as black quarterbacks. Like I thought, okay, yeah, it's like okay, well, again, it goes back to the mobility. Of course, when you have a quarterback who can run, it's just it's way harder to defend. But the important part about that is have that guy be an actual quarterback. Like, and Lamar Jackson has shown, hey, I can win the game from the pocket, or I can win the game with my legs. Like, and when you have a player like that, I think over time, it's only now he's able to show more black athletes coming up. Like now, black kids are looking at the end like, oh, I can actually play quarterback in the NFL. So you have more kids striving to be that. And I think right now, as far as like ownership is concerned, um, just with off the strength of black billionaires, I think there are going to be more black billionaires created over the next 10 years to 15 years to really put the real pressure on getting in some of these ownership meetings and being able to really make noise as far as ownership is concerned, to where it's the same thing as early 2000s. Like you'd have a Steve McNair or you'd have a Randall Cunningham, but that was pretty much it. Like it was Donovan McNabb won, but now it's like we're having 10 to 12 like real good black quarterbacks now that I didn't even see coming 10 years ago. Like I was hoping it would come, but I didn't think it would come this fast. So I'm looking at it from the same way on the business side. Like as long as we keep on, like I think with the growth of platforms like Twitch and Instagram, and being able to make money streaming like this, like I think Kai Cenat is showing a lot of black youth that hey, there's real money that can be made on the internet in a positive way. And with more kids being able to see that, there's going to be more black kids that have the real like ability to shoot for the stars as far as like real income is concerned. And then when you have it's harder to have that conversation now just because it seems it's way more far-fetched because we don't have the numbers there as far as like billionaires. Like we have in the billionaires that we do have, it's like there's like a handful of them that are interested in owning sports teams, let alone NFL teams. Like you've seen the Jay-Z, he's in the NBA, but uh, the NFL, I don't like you can't. It's going to be hard to hold off when you have more. Like as long as we have to have more before we can say, okay, this is unfair. Because right now it's like if you have 200 billionaires bidding for a team and 195 of them are white, it's gonna be hard to be like, oh, well, this is, they're just picking him because he's white. It's just that the numbers are just in their favor. So
No, but that's what they're doing.
yeah,
That's what they're doing because they sold to a group rather than to sell to the tech guy.
yep.
So the owners had to vote on that, but they were led by Jerry Jones. So that tells you where that league is and where it's going to stand.
Yeah, and that's and that's the other part. I'm glad you brought up Jerry Jones. It's like that the old white man mentality is only going to be around for another 20, 30 years. And because
that's why the BFL
yeah,
should be something that people should be supporting.
mm-hmm, yeah. So and that yeah, that's just like one of those things where it's just I think over the next 15 years it's going to be interesting to see like how many more we're going to have as far as billionaires are concerned, because it's now being something that people are seeing, like the amount of money that Kai Cenat's making on a day-to-day basis. It's like it's showing black youth that, oh, this is possible. So as long as there is like an actual like confidence there, I think that's what's really going to change things, because before, all we knew, in order to be a billionaire, all we knew was, oh, you either got to be, you really have to start a company from street. It's got to be a tech company, or you got to, be I can't even say a rapper or a doctor or a lawyer, because even them, they're just millionaires at the most. But billionaires, when you talk about billionaires, it's like, oh, Castanet has a chance of really getting there just off of the strength of his name. Like, when you understand, because he understands his brand, and when you understand how powerful your brand can be and how far that can take you, he's showing Black youth that, hey, you can really do some damage if you build your brand, to a certain level.
So, in closing, what is a message that you'd like to leave for our audience? How they connect with you on social media, your website, all of that good stuff.
Um, Well, a message I would say, thanks for listening. I appreciate, your time as well, Mr. Charles E. King. I appreciate everybody that listened. I didn't even realize we were with an hour and 55 minutes. Just been talking. So sometimes I just talk away. But yeah, one message is, yeah, just I like the whole segment on competitive spirit, just understanding, how important it is to be competitive, but still be under control, be in discipline, and understanding that day to day, you can attack each day with a level of, fire that doesn't have to be just over the top to where you burn out, but just get little, bits and pieces done that you think that, okay, well, because some people, sometimes they'll set their goals too high and they'll say, oh, I didn't get this done today, so I'll never, it's never going to happen. No, all you got to do is say, hey, today I'm just going to focus on, watching 2 clips of self-improvement, and, just doing small things. I think that when you start mastering the small things, that's really going to take you to the next level. But you can reach me on Instagram. It's Reggie Dion 5, Reggie Dion 5. Reach me on LinkedIn. Um, you can type in, I believe it's Reggie Dion Stewart on LinkedIn. And then you can also email me at Reggie Dion 1991 at gmail.com. I also have another email, but that one's going to be a little bit, it's not as busy as the other one. So I'll be able to really pinpoint whatever questions you have. But you reach me at, again, it's Reggie, Reggie Dion 1991 at gmail.com. You can send me in, whatever questions you have or about anything that we spoke about on this podcast, and I'll get back to you.
I want to thank you for your time, and that's definitely been enlightening. And I want to thank you for especially talking about the community part, because that's I think that's really really important. And again, as we're talking about, how we have the rifts and divides, we've got to do better with those things.
Exactly. Thank you for having me on your platform.
For those of you that have been watching on all 8 of the channels in which we stream, I want to thank you for your support and your time. For those of you that are watching on the YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I would appreciate your support by doing so, because it would allow you to catch all of the shows live, as well as you're able to go back and watch all of the previous recorded content. I want to thank you, Reggie, again for taking the time out. Hopefully, we can have you back next season as we go into season 4, and make it a catch up show, and say with the update as to the growth in which you are experiencing with your business and everything that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Sounds good.
For those of you, again, have a great evening, and please check us out tomorrow night as we have another show here on American Black and White, where we will continue to color conversations on America's canvas. You guys have a great